And former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich. For 2 days in a row now, they're playing the race card and using the Klan. What does that tell you?
It tells you that they're desperate and they're terrified. You can always measure how much trouble they're in by the intensity of their attack and the degree of their desperation. And I think it's pretty clear now, as you just pointed out, you know, when you have 87% of the country that thinks you did something wrong, you got an uphill climb to get to be president. When you have over half the country that thinks you might have a criminal indictment, it gets pretty tough to get those last votes.
And by the way, I hear the thousands that have been waiting online and you've been signing books all night. We appreciate you taking time, Mr. Speaker. All right, let's say, God forbid, she wins the presidency. Will the country be paralyzed? Will she spend all of her waking hours fighting off potential indictment, fighting with or meeting with lawyers? Will any work in this country get done, or will we literally be spinning our wheels with no progress whatsoever?
Oh, I think that the amount of evidence that's coming out day after day after day, she will drown in investigations. FBI investigations. The Internal Revenue Service in Dallas is investigating the entire legality of the Clinton Foundation. You're going to have investigations from both the House and Senate. And every day we learn, as you pointed out a minute ago, we learn new things. And all of them are bad. And so I just think, you know, the evidence, as you and I were talking about on radio today, the very fact that the Constitution prohibits office holders or their spouses from taking the kind of money they were taking from Qatar and from Saudi Arabia and from Morocco and from Russia. It's just clear illegality. And I think that what the Clintons are doing is they're finally forcing us into a national conversation about whether or not we're going to be a country where the rule of law matters and a country where even the powerful can't commit felonies and get away with it. And I think this is a very decisive moment, and because it's so obvious, I think that's why you're going to see the last 3 days absolute hysterical attacks from the president, from Secretary Clinton and others, because I think they sense it slipping away.
The president absolutely lost it today. We'll play that video a little bit later in the program on top of using the KKK analogy. You know, one of the things I like to point out, Mr. Speaker, is, all right, how are we better off than we were 8 years ago? Well, I look at numbers. You're a numbers guy, you're a historian, but we now have the lowest labor participation rate since the 70s. We have now 95 million Americans out of the labor force. We now have 51-year low in the home ownership rate, the worst recovery since the 40s, 13 million more Americans that are on food stamps, 8 million more Americans that are in poverty. We've doubled the national debt. 1 in 5 American families don't have a single family member working. In the black community, 93% voted for Obama. Well, if you look at the increase, 58% increase black Americans on food stamps, 20% increase black Americans out of the labor force. Will this shift? Will this change?
Well, I think that it'll change if you get Donald Trump. It's not going to change if you keep the same policies, the same personalities, the same approaches. I mean, the tragedy of many of America's inner cities, Detroit, where 9% of the students can read in the 3rd grade, Baltimore, where 13% of the students can pass their 8th grade science and math test. This cripples people economically, leaves them without a viable future, and creates many of the problems that we see bubbling up because people are in despair. At the same time, I cannot overstate the depth of corruption that we are beginning to learn about from Wikileaks and from other things, including the FBI investigations and the court-ordered release of various emails. I mean, the courts have played a major role here in exposing just how bad this is, and the total effect, which is growing by the day. And I can't quite imagine with 650,000 emails on Anthony Weiner's computer, how many new things we're going to learn over the next couple months.
Well,
so
Huma
I think
Abedin signed
Hillary to win. Yeah.
She signed a separation agreement saying she had turned all of those over under penalty of law. Every email, sure. And if she has classified emails, and there was a report tonight that in fact there was, every email on that server would represent a separate count. It would seem Huma Abedin might have a very quick path to jail along with her husband, unless of course they start cooperating.
Well, remember, 43 people were indicted, tried, or convicted in the Watergate. It wasn't just Richard Nixon, but there were a whole circle of people, because you get sucked into these things, and then you get sucked into the cover-up, and then you get sucked into lying to the FBI. All these things are felonies. And I think just Doug Band's memo, the 12-page memo, outlining how Clinton Inc. operates and the way they set the whole thing up to enrich themselves, that memo alone would give any prosecutor a roadmap for a trial.
All right, we got to take a break. Oh, isn't it nice? I guess Jay-Z and Beyonce are doing a concert, and that's the same Jay-Z. I think I see a lot of N-words in his song. Isn't that true? Yeah, quite a bit. And we have some of the lyrics. Well, isn't that nice of Hillary to hang out with people that use that wonderful language? We have more with Newt Gingrich right after the break. We'll look at the polls when we get back. Brand new Fox polls just released tonight show the race has tightened. I mean, it is razor thin with days, and the momentum going to Donald Trump. Plus, Wikileaks continue to be a major headache for Team Clinton. Ed Henry has been combing through these emails all week and all day. We'll have an update and a full report also tonight.
Listen up. Hey, everybody, hey, listen up. Hey, I told you to be focused.
President absolutely loses it at a rally in North Carolina today. All of that plus Sheriff David Clark. We have a busy news Friday night for you straight ahead. And welcome back to Hannity. Brand new Fox News national polls just released tonight show the race is tightening. In the four-way presidential race, Hillary Clinton is up by only 2 points, 45-43. But in the two-way presidential race, it is a one-point race, 46-45. We continue with former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. Mr. Speaker, I could give you all the numbers all day long. Do they even matter at this point?
No, I don't think so, because I don't think we understand what's happening with the voting public. For example, that African-American turnout is down from what it was for Obama, and that's why you're getting the kind of savage demagoguery that you saw today. You know that younger people are very turned off by Hillary and all of this illegality, and that she's not going to get all of the Sanders voters that people expected. And you also know that in state after state, Republicans are doing very well in the early balloting and in the absentee balloting. In almost every state, they're doing better than they did in 2012. And in a number of the states, the Democrats are doing substantially worse. I think in North Carolina, for example, I think the gap is maybe 100 or 150,000 worse for the Democrats than it was back in 2012. So, and by the way, Reince Priebus deserves a lot of credit, because they invested at the Republican National Committee a lot of resources in building a genuine ground game that could match the labor unions and turn out votes. And I think we're seeing in a lot of states, it's having a big impact.
I had a conversation with a mutual friend of ours today, and the person's like, well, probably everybody's made up their mind by now. And I said, no. History shows there are a lot of people that are going to be walking into that voting booth on Tuesday that will be deciding then based on what happens on Saturday and Sunday and Monday, and maybe even early Tuesday. Do you agree with that?
That's right. Well, not only that, but I was talking today with several key people who pointed out that in 1980, Reagan does a 30-minute television speech on Monday night, and people, the undecideds, are still making up their mind Monday night. And because he looks and feels presidential, the last people who weren't decided, they break for Reagan by an enormous margin. He and Carter are almost tied a week out, and starting actually starting on Thursday, it all began to break towards Reagan. And on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, his margin just kept going up and up.
Is that what you see happening now?
Until finally he won.
Is that what you see happening in Pennsylvania, Michigan, New Hampshire, and Colorado?
I was looking at numbers today that were startling. Michigan was out of play 2 weeks ago. Michigan's now in play. Pennsylvania, I think we have two polls now that show both Toomey and Trump are tied.
Yep.
In New Hampshire, Trump's beginning to pull away, and Senator Ayotte is winning by a substantial margin. And by the way, Young has now come through in Indiana and is consolidating his lead over Birch Bayh, who, remember, Senator Bayh, the former senator, had a huge lead in the summertime, and the Democrats were counting that as a pickup. That's now clearly going to stay Republican. Ron Johnson, I think, is now in a statistical tie, according to the Marquette University poll, which is very, very respected in Wisconsin. So I see a lot of things, and as you know, I've been in, Cliss and I were in Georgia, and then I went on to Missouri and Colorado and Nevada. She and I are here tonight in Illinois. Tomorrow we'll be in Wisconsin. As we go around everywhere we've been, you see an increasing seriousness and increasing intensity for Trump. I have people walk up to me all over the place and say to me, in fact, I went to the movies the other night. I actually took 3 hours off, went to the movie.
Wow, I'm
and
shocked.
the lady who was selling tickets, the lady who was selling tickets said to me, Trump has to win. Now,
well, I agree with her.
It's that kind of you know,
I
but
see
it's
it
that
everywhere.
kind of everywhere you go, passion. I don't have anybody
Yeah.
running.
All
I
right,
did
let me
have
ask
two
you a last
people
question.
actually tell me that they were for Hillary.
And by the way, I do not interrupt you. Whoever told you that tonight is not true. All right. So Hillary was on stage.
There are people in Naperville who are going to love that comment because they know who they were and they know that they told me.
Okay. Jay-Z and Beyonce on stage with Hillary tonight. The rapper repeatedly used the N-word, dropped the F-bomb, you know, with his F with me, you know I've got it, and other songs. You turned into the mother effer greatest. If you're feeling like a pimp N-word, go brush your shoulders off, and I can keep going. And there's Hillary on stage, you know, and here she's so offended by Donald Trump, and there she's praising Beyonce and Jay-Z. What is your reaction to that? Hypocrisy?
Well, look, I don't want to hurt your feelings. I'm not sure it's hypocrisy. I think she may forget. She's been very forgetful over the years.
Yeah, she
I think
has.
maybe she forgets who they are.
She didn't remember
So
that she
it
was
could
briefed.
just be that
Yeah.
this could be a sign of the concussion, that she didn't know she doesn't actually know who they are. And she thinks it's so nice that they're hanging out with her.
All right, you
know,
can't
I'm
make
giving
me
you the
laugh.
benefit
Stop
of the doubt.
making me laugh when I'm really serious. We're 4 days away, and you're messing around. There's no time to mess around.
No, there's nobody better to mess with than Hillary Clinton because she is a crook. She ought to be in jail, and we should not take her seriously as a potential president because she's never going to be the president of the United States.
From your lips to God's ears, it would be. This country will be paralyzed and more divided, and a constitutional crisis would await us. Mr. Speaker, good to see you. Thank you for taking time, and my best to the people
Good to see you.
in Illinois that you're with. Coming up, Wikileaks continues to release damning emails related to the Clinton campaign. Ed Henry, he's been reading it all day as a full report, also tonight. President Obama loses it at a rally. Now, if I was Jay-Z hanging out with Hillary, he loses his shh at a rally. That's how I'd say it.